In the 231st Block Talks, we peek into the intersection of airspace and crypto with helicopter pilot Alec Wilson, co-founder and COO of Spexi. I'm your host, Mauricio Magaldi, and this is Block Drops, your weekly digest on blockchain for business. These news are not a form of endorsement, sponsorship, or encouragement for consumption, and are meant for educational purposes only. All right, everybody, I'm here with Alec Wilson, who's going to tell us who he is and what he does with blockchain. Alec, welcome to Block Talks.
Thanks for having us. Really happy to be here.
Cool, man. So let's start from the top. So what brought you into crypto? What was Alec's superhero origin story?
Yeah, everyone's got one, I think, in blockchain, especially if they're still building for as long as we have been, which doesn't feel like that long, but in crypto, it's a long time. So I've been in this space since late 2021. And that's when we decided to make a blockchain pivot in our business to build on chain. And we're a drone software company that is in the business of getting drone pilots to use our software to contribute data to an ever-updating map of the world. And it's really now become one of the biggest, or the biggest, fully standardized drone imagery networks in the world. And a lot of it has to do with the blockchain. But before we go too deep into that, I did not start at the blockchain, nor even at drones. I'm actually a commercial helicopter pilot by trade. And I flew for about 5 years all across Western Canada and the United States, flying all different kinds of missions. So you name it, I did it. I was in wildfires, I was in low-level survey, I was in tourism, I was in mining, I was in a lot of different things. And I really loved, and still do love, flying helicopters. But it was around 2017 where drones really started getting more and more popular, and people were using them, and they were showing up on our job sites, but they were also showing up in the airspace. And I actually had to dodge one once with a fully loaded helicopter of people in the low Vancouver airspace. And it obviously got my attention, right? And so from there on, I started really getting interested in what was going on with drones, what were the regulations around drones, like how are people using them, and why are they being flown in all these different places? And that led me to start a company with some others at my helicopter company and in and around Canada, which is where we're from, Vancouver, Canada, to start a company called Coastal Drone, which was started to help the Canadian government figure out how to create regulations to integrate these aircraft safely into the manned airspace. But then also we realized there was a big opportunity to train drone pilots to get to the standard of knowledge that was required for these new regulations that were coming in 2019. And we helped kind of figure out what some of those regulations might be. So that company became the largest in Canada for drone pilot certification and training from a technology perspective. It was all online, and we had some deals with Best Buy and other retailers in Canada to distribute that product across all of their drone sales. And around 2019, I was quite happily flying helicopters and running this drone technology regulation company. And that's when I met Bill. And Bill is the CEO of Spexi. He's also Vancouver based. And he was in the very early days of building a software company to connect drone pilots to opportunity using software. So drones can be automatable. You can use software to tell them what to do and where to go and get them into autopilot mode. And Bill's background is all from imaging the Earth with fixed wing aircraft. So you have satellites and then you have planes. And planes is this middle layer of imagery that most people don't realize is actually most of the imagery that you look at when you look at Google Maps. It's not from satellites, it's from planes. And these planes fly grids across most cities in North America and most modern cities around the world. Really big, expensive planes with holes cut out of the bottom of them and like $1 million cameras that point through this hole. And this is how most cities are imaged even to this day. And so we got together and said, look, my company had 10,000 plus drone pilots in it that were using this training product. He was building this software company to collaborate drone pilots to create data. Let's put these things together. So I ended up selling my company and joining Bill full time. And that's how I got into drone software. And so at that time we were, building basically a SaaS product that had some networking effects, but we were very much still in the seed stage. We hadn't raised money yet. We had built some product and we had some customers and some revenue, and we were going to go raise money. And that's when we ran into Helium. And Helium at the end of 2021 was just going crazy, right? I think the valuation was over $1 billion, and they had done like, a couple 100,000 nodes in like a couple of months. And we just went, whoa, that's a crypto use case. Like that's what you could do with crypto potentially and ownership on the blockchain. And it was super early for us, but we, I came up with this idea of like, what if you could do that with drones? What if the drones became the crypto miners and you fully standardized the inputs using this hexagon system, and the flight plans were already there for the pilots, and all they had to do is contribute using the mobile app. There's so many drones out there already. This was a missing piece that we had been trying to solve for some time. And so we said, look, well, let's see if this works for us. So we wrote a very early white paper. We built out a deck that included this narrative. And the only people we knew in crypto in Vancouver was Dapper Labs. So we went to Dapper Labs at that time, the creators of the Flow blockchain and CryptoKitties. And we said, look, what do you guys think of this? Is this crazy, or is this real? Like, could this be doable on the blockchain? And they said, not only do we think it's amazing, but if you agree to build it on our blockchain, the Flow blockchain, we'll take you to our investors, which included Andreessen Horowitz, Google Ventures, Blockchange. I think, like you name them, the best investors in Web3 at the time. And so sure enough, we said, okay, that sounds good. We knew nothing about blockchain, so we agreed to build it on Flow. We started meeting their investors. The second investor, Blockchange, that we met ended up writing a $4 million check into the business within a few weeks because they just loved the use case. And the rest is history. Now we just closed our Series A 6 months ago, $15 million Series A. And we're now the largest fully decentralized, standardized drone imagery network in the world. And with plans to have a token power everything in the not too distant future. So that's kind of the crazy, path towards helicopter pilot to drone software crypto guy.
That is a rather unusual journey from original career into crypto, and I'm okay that most people that have learned about Bitcoin early on, regardless of their original profession, ended up getting involved to a certain extent. But becoming a builder of something that is novel and unique and kind of really getting bitten by the bug is very, very unique. Now, was there anything from you had an entrepreneurial vein already, which is very useful in crypto because we're building the internet. So having that impetus is important. But technically and business wise, what were the things that we were able to port from that experience into now Spexi and dealing with decentralization to a certain extent? Were there learnings or things you did that transposed well? Were things that you assumed because you had run a business and now you're in crypto, it's completely different? What were the things that matched and the things that didn't from the previous experience?
Yeah, I think it was helpful to us because we're a team that was not a crypto team. We're a geospatial data team and an aviation team, right? That's really where our core experience comes from. And we view the blockchain as a massive enabling technology to scale faster, to flip the two-sided network model a little bit on its head and give users ownership instead of just transactional assets throughout the lifetime of the network, so they can come along for the ride. And if the network does well, then there's benefit for everybody. I think it was our first conversation with crypto VCs was the day that Terra Luna crashed, and the day we closed our seed round was the day that FTX crashed. And so, luckily we got all the capital in that we wanted before FTX crashed, but we saw this really weird cross section of crypto during that time. As we were building, this network, which is now the network is called Layer Drone. By the way, Spexi is the labs code. Layer Drone is the crypto network that enables all of this activity, which is now built on the base blockchain. So we migrated away from Flow, but I think we just realized that there's a lot of weird stuff going on in the early days, and that there was a lot of hype. And we didn't really agree with a lot of the go-to-market strategies for the way that crypto networks try to bring themselves into the world, especially the DPINs or the data networks. We found that a lot of the strategies were like incentivize as much activity as you possibly can around the world, and then try to monetize the data later. When that becomes difficult, selling data everywhere all at once. You have a lot of tokens going out to incentivize activity across the world. Those tokens are precious. They're valuable. They are finite. They need to be treated very respectfully. And so having token emissions go out with enough demand coming in to make it make sense, we didn't really see a lot of that happening. And so I think for us, like our previous experience in building companies that weren't in crypto just made us pause there and say, you know what, we don't know if that makes sense for our network. And so we're going to keep building. We're going to keep getting customers. And we're going to pause on any launch of a token. And so since our testnet launched in 2024, we've been paying contributors in cash through Stripe, actually. And so they also earn points, but they've all been getting paid, compensated in fiat. And there's been a lot of benefit to that because we have a really active and excited and loyal community that doesn't feel like, they've been earning points for 2 years and then they're all chomping at the bit for an airdrop and a token launch, right? Like they're like, hey, like we're good, like we're with you guys on this. And we have customers that are currently testing and buying data from the network that require performance from the pilots to contribute that data. And so like we're building this in a way that I think is a little bit different than some of these other networks have done that. And I think our previous experience in building companies before there's tokens was helpful to answer your question.
It's a very non-crypto native approach, if that's kind of a definition. But it is a very user-centric approach, which crypto is also guilty of not being that much, right? So both of you co-founders have previous business building experience, eager to solve problems you know about, that you've lived through. And ultimately, if I got this right, what you're building is the integrated, decentralized economic layer for the activities you already know, that you've experienced in the past, right? So it seems that you're combining a lot of your own business understanding and being first person kind of in the problem, and then adding this new layer. But I do have to ask, you mentioned, you gave me, and this is the protocol builder in me coming up into the conversation. You mentioned you moved from Flow to Base. Can you help me understand, to the extent you can disclose, what were the reasons that led to that decision? And ultimately, when you're searching for a protocol upon which to build the business, what is the selection criteria you've applied?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, when we started, we really didn't know much about blockchain at all. And Flow seemed like a great place to build this. And the team was great. And Dapper Labs is an investor. And, we have lots of credit to that team and what they've built and contributed to crypto. Honestly, it was, we went through the Alliance Accelerator. So we were the Alliance cohort all 9, Alliance DAO. And they ended up investing. And we were on with some of their mentors, and they were like, we don't think that Flow is the right place for you to build this. And we said, okay, why? And they said, well, right now we're seeing it either is going to be Solana or it's going to be an EVM, L2. But you need to be in Ethereum or Solana. At that time, Flow was building in its own language, and it wasn't even, it was sort of a different option. And the community was very much focused on games. And they said, look, we really don't think you should do that. So actually, we then went to Arbitrum. From there, we said, okay, well, let's rebuild this thing in Arbitrum, because the smart contracts from Flow to an EVM wasn't so simple at that time. Now I think it is much more simple. But we ended up in the Arbitrum testnet, Sepuloi, I think, which then got deprecated. And I can't remember why, but it did. And then we ended up in Polygon. And then, and then as we're still waiting, we weren't it was just an EVM testnet. It wasn't a huge deal for us where exactly it was at the time. But we made a strategic decision to go build with Base for a bunch of reasons. One is that we believe in what Coinbase is doing and what they're doing for the North American crypto sector. We believe their approach is sensible and we think it relates well to our business. We also, most of our users are North American, and so we know that many of them will want to use Coinbase and the Coinbase infrastructure to on-ramp and off-ramp and do their exchanging and trading. And so that's helpful and sensible. And it just felt like the right move for us, given that we've already been building an EVM. But we've been talking with Solana for a lot, and those guys are great. And it really came down to the fact that we were already at EVM, and we felt that Base made sense for us. But Solana was we were actually very close to pulling over and going and just rebuilding it back in Solana for a third time. But our CTO very much said, please don't do that. I think ultimately we're not super maxi on any specific chain. I think Base is a good place for us for now, but I suspect the future will have bridges to Solana and whatever. So yeah, for now we're in Base.
Got it. One of the things that caught my attention while you were talking about your previous career was the regulated aspect, right? Crypto for a few years, or for the longest part of its history, has been playing outside of the margins of regulated environments. It's only in the last few years that we had a lot of movement against it, and then all of a sudden a lot of movement in favor of it and trying to curtail and corral crypto's kind of wild nature. You're kind of blending these two industries at the moment with Spexi and the solution and everything, right? The layered drone. Both sides are now, one is heavily regulated because if you do anything wrong in airspace, it could spell death. Not great. Crypto, you'll wipe people out of their savings, which is also not great, but ultimately it's a different degree of risk and consequences. What has been the reception of the, if there's any overlap first, of the other regulator, the non-crypto, non-financial regulator, when you talk to them about it? What's that reception like? Is this concerning? Is this encouraged? Is this seen as an innovation? Is this even a conversation? What's the kind of surrounding circumstances when it comes to regulation? And now you're bringing all of that data on chain and creating this kind of economic incentive layer around it. What's that conversation like?
Yeah, good question. Surprisingly, don't get asked that question enough. I think it should be asked more. So thanks for asking it. There's regulations associated to how people fly things in the airspace, and rightly so, right? They're there to protect the traveling public, and that's sensible from anyone's perspective. And so we've built this network to work with and operate well with the current regulatory environment that's out there today. So the drones that work on our network are all the sub 250 gram drones. So the DJI Mini 2, 3, and 4. So it's the most popular drone in the world by far. And depending on which country you're in, there's different regulatory treatment associated to the drone based on its weight. So in Canada, for example, where we're based, if the drone weighs less than 250 grams, you actually don't need a license to fly it. You just have to be careful when you fly it. In the United States, it doesn't matter how much it weighs. If you're flying commercially, you need a license. If you're flying recreationally, you don't. But still, you get help on the weight threshold because it's just a less risky aircraft should it come into contact with something. We have created this network so that drone pilots can fly in visual line of sight. So each hex is a certain size that promotes the ability for pilots to keep contact visually with the drone as it's flying. You'll hear a lot about beyond visual line of sight in drones, and drones being able to fly much farther from pilots and do things without the supervision of the human. And we're not quite there yet, and especially in the big city context where this network operates. But this thing really works within all current best practice drone regulations. And so we were very intentional about that. We're not here to reinvent the wheel. We're here to give people an opportunity to go earn with their drones in a compliant and safe way. And so, drone pilots can do that at their discretion. They're all pilot and command, as we say in aviation. So our software automates their flight, and they're just monitoring for safety. But at any time, they can take back control of the drone should they need to. And the drone just performs exactly as it would before the software took over the brain. And so it's at their discretion whether they decide to fly that hex, what happens, whether they want to descend in altitude for something, or they don't want to fly a hex because there's a crane that's come up perhaps from a construction site. There's lots of different things that happen in the world that are chaotic and unpredictable. And so really it's centered on the pilot who is earning and contributing this data to be responsible for that operation at all times. And that's exactly how all drone operations are. And so really when we brought this to the regulators, like in Canada and the US, they were like, okay, this makes sense. This is how we've designed this thing. So you're definitely doing it at scales that we've never seen before, but these are the rules and you guys are within them. And so go nuts, right? And so far it's been, I think, surprisingly well received, frankly, on the aviation side. I thought there'd be maybe more pushback, but I think people are just kind of impressed mostly about it. So yeah, I mean, safety is top priority for this network. When you come to contribute at Layer Drone and using Spexi software, we have training for you. We have reminders and app walkthroughs and all of those kinds of things to ensure that pilots are flying as safe as possible. That's absolutely the top priority. And then a lot of them just have a lot of fun doing it. So it kind of is a good combination.
That's an interesting reaction. I mean, I've been in crypto for 12 years. Before that, financial services, the regulators in this particular area are always very, I want to say, overly cautious. They don't get excited about much. So it's refreshing to hear that for sure. So you mentioned you're currently testnet. Is that correct?
Testnet on base, yeah.
Right. So what can we expect to see from you and the team in terms of moving the project forward? Are there any big announcements? What's the roadmap for the year if you have that line of sight?
Layer Drone plans to move to mainnet in the next 3 months, I would say, and the token launch is planned at some time just after mainnet launch. So mainnet's going to happen before the token goes live, because we can still incentivize at mainnet, using other methods before we introduce the token fully, which is a part of the gradual plan. We're going to make some big announcements in the next couple of weeks around a lot of the plans coming out here, but the community is going to gradually start getting transitioned on chain, because right now they're very much not on chain, right? We have a big community of really enthusiastic drone pilots that are not on chain yet. That the way that their data is verified is on chain. We use an interesting combo of soul-bound NFTs and metadata that verifies their contributions. We call it proof of capture. But it's all happening in the background. They don't really, for them, it's just a process that occurs and then they keep flying. And so gradually we're going to start bringing them all on chain within the next few months. And then Layer Drone plans to launch that token and start it being a fully token incentivized network. So the demand side is also ramping up, as well, and has been for the last 12 months, I would say. And so some exciting announcements there for how the network is being used from a customer's perspective. But yeah, this is a big year for Layer Drone and Spexi. This is the big year for us to bring things on chain. We were hoping to do that closer to the end of last year, but macroeconomic factors and just a bunch of things caused us to rethink that. And so, the good news is, again, for us, is our community is not chomping at the bit because there's cash incentives associated with this. So it's working well right now. Yeah. So that's kind of as much as I can say about Layer Drone's roadmap for 2026.
It's refreshing to hear that. This is exciting progress. Now, as a builder in an industry that doesn't stop, the blockchain never sleeps, but we're not a blockchain. So what is your recipe for keeping yourself healthy, sane, productive while building on a 24/7 industry?
Yeah, I think crypto can be really difficult that way, because it's always on, right? It's always being updated. There's always something happening. There's no 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, like there is in the traditional finance sector. So, I mean, for us at our team, we focus in hard on objectives and key results. Everyone's really aligned to the common goals and key results that drive towards them. We track that progress um, closely as a team together every 2 weeks, and as long as we're making good headway, I think people feel like they need to do what they need to do to get the work done. But it's not, we're not doing nine to nine here. Often. I mean, for me, I need to get active, so I'm on the treadmill or out with my daughter and my wife or whatever. I'm out in the mountains in Vancouver a lot. I need to stay active to keep my brain clear. That's a big part for me that I've learned is at least once a day something that gets the heart rate up that flushes the system, and sleep. Limit limit things that make sleeping harder, and prioritize sleep. And if you're having a hard day, get a good sleep, and your whole perspective changes the next day.
Sleeping well is a superpower. I can't agree more. I fully agree. In that same kind of spirit, like, but now looking more towards the industry, what is the one thing as an industry we need to fix right now to avoid working another 15, 20 years and then realizing we didn't, and then we realize, oh, we're back there. We're back in 2026. What would be that one thing in your opinion, and why so?
I think we need to just focus on getting to what's real, trying to find out what's real about these networks, and then evaluate them for that. Like, it's only as good as it is easy to sell, and whatever the network is doing or producing, it has to make sense from a value perspective in the world. And I think what crypto has been criticized for, rightly so, is there's just a lot of hypeonomics, and there's a lot of people that are getting liquidity too quickly at the behest of a community or whatever, and not thinking about it more long term. Like, crypto needs to really extend their time horizons to think about how long it actually takes to build real valuable things. And it's not months, it's years, right? It's 5 years, it's 10 years. Like, really think about how do you design this, because the crypto is so powerful. There's so much power in ownership. There's so much power in your ability to defend that ownership from an immutable perspective on the blockchain. There's so much power in the ability to form markets and liquidity and incentives where that could never have been done before blockchain. But it also then promotes really short-term thinking. And I guess the one thing I would say is just we need to get more long-term thinkers into this space, and less short-term hypeonomic thinkers.
I like the long term view. I think people forget that the problems worth solving, they're worth solving in the long term, and they require consistency and sustainability to be tackled for their entire resolution. You don't rewire the entire internet in a bull run. That is naive
That's right.
to begin with. So I love the take. Love that. You're a pre-crypto person coming into crypto. I'm pretty sure other people in your former field look at you and say, "Hmm, Alex is in crypto. How do I get on? Do they call you? Do they send you messages like, hey, you're on this Bitcoin thing. It's all-time high. How do I get in?" What's the usual onboarding conversation you have? Do you point them to like content, material, books? What's the welcome to crypto kit you give people these days?
Yeah, I mean, I think honestly, it's a mixed bag. People think I'm either nuts or, they're like they're trying to call the bottoms and want to know what I think about when the bottom's coming in for Bitcoin or whatever. I point them to Coinbase, or I point them to wherever's easiest for them to learn more about how to start playing around. But I honestly try to just stay out of it. I think if people are gonna get into crypto, they'll find their way in, and I don't want to promote it or pull away from it. I'm just kind of like, this is what I'm doing, and if you find it interesting, then you should check it out. But I really try not to get too in the middle of anything, because it often just ends in either more frustration of someone having a take that they're, totally believing in that I don't agree with, or they feel like it's all just a bunch of bullshit and crypto's crazy. And, so I just try to, stay our course and build what we can build and let people come up to their own conclusions.
That's the true answer of a crypto builder, if you ask me. Now we're about time here, but I do want to let you kind of welcome people to whatever you guys are doing. How to get in touch, how to keep tabs on the progress of the project, or to reach out to you. What's the path there?
Yeah, so you can find us, online. Layerdrone.org is the home of Layerdrone and the network that pilots contribute to. Spexi.com, spexi.com is where you can find the Labs Co. Spexi's entity, and that's really focused more on customers, so data buyers coming in to buy data from the network. You can also download the mobile application, though, for drone pilots there to contribute to the Layerdrone network. So spexi.com/pilots if you want to contribute. And we're on socials on X at Spexi Geospatial and X at Layerdrone. And yeah, I think we find ourselves really in an interesting time. This network is producing a data set that is totally unprecedented. No one has ever been able to network drones over cities, over the Earth's biggest cities, to produce a fully standardized, usable data set before. And it's much better than what satellites or planes can provide, which opens an entirely new host of use cases. And one of them we find ourselves authentically sitting in is this transition towards this next generation of physical AI, spatial AI, geospatial AI, world models, right? These models require very accurate, high resolution imagery of the world. And they need it in various formats. And it just so happens we've been building towards that for some time now without even really knowing it. And so some of the announcements that we'll be making soon and some of the paths that this network is going is like finding itself really at like the foundation of what it is to build these next world physical AI models. So I think that's a really cool narrative that we've been able to participate in, and we'll be able to talk much more about it soon.
Everyone keep tabs on what Alec's building through the channels. Alec, good luck with the project. We'll also be looking out for what you guys build next. And thanks for joining us and sharing a little bit of your journey from airspace into crypto. It's a very unique combination of industries, and as we're big fans of unique use cases, that's absolutely one of them. And thanks for joining us.
Okay, thanks, Mauricio. You bet.
Appreciate you. Catch us online. We're on Instagram at BlockDropsPodcast, on Twitter at BlockDropsPod or 0x Mauricio. We're on Lens at blockdrops.lens. We have a newsletter on LinkedIn. Write to us at blockdropspodcast@gmail.com, and you can listen to the BlockDrops podcast at Spotify, iColab, Faberbun Tech, and all of the other major streaming platforms. Yay! Shout out to Alec for bringing such an incredible, different, and interesting background to BlockTalks. Also, shout out to Rafit Bishi for making this conversation possible. Don't forget to leave the ratings on your favorite player and check out the merch store at blockdropspodcast.xyz. This is all for today. Stay rare, stay weird, LFG.